Hello everyone! Last week we began the story of Malygos, in which we talked about the creation of the aspects, the creation of the dragon soul, and the blue losing a whole bunch of his flight to Deathwing's betrayal. Driven mad with grief, no longer the kind-hearted jokester, locked away in his frozen realm the Nexus that once shined with colors and magic. He wasn't the only one either. The betrayal led to the weakened aspects largely retreating from the world. In the millennia that followed, we saw Ner'zhul occupying himself with the ancient task of safeguarding the past, present and future. He rarely emerged from the whirling time waves, while Ysera spent much of her time in the Emerald Dream, monitoring the health of Azeroth's wilds. Alexstrasza the Red did intervene in the activities of the world's mortal races, but only rarely. She also kept watch for any sign of Deathwing, as after the War of the Ancients, he had disappeared and settled into a deep slumber. The dragon soul had been too much for even the corrupted dragon aspect to wield in battle, and the artifact's power had nearly destroyed him. His body could not take it, so metal plates were attached to his spine to keep his fiery form from tearing apart. Deathwing needed time to recover from his wounds and regain his strength. During his long slumber, the other dragonflights hunted his corrupted children to the brink of extinction. Time was not kind to the dragons, nor the aspects, and their realms became vulnerable for those with bad intentions. This led to things like the Emerald Nightmare and the Infinite Dragonflight. Whereas Deathwing caused Malygos to isolate himself, he would also be the reason for his return. Many years passed until the Dark Portal opened up and the first Horde invasion of Azeroth could begin. The incredible amount of magic that was used to open up the Dark Portal, it finally roused Deathwing. He watched with fascination as Stormwind and the Horde fought, and he became convinced that the orcs might be the means by which he could restore his wounded black dragonflight to its full glory. Deathwing knew that more than just the other dragon aspects would oppose him if he ever came out of hiding. Many of the mortal races would do so as well. If the Horde could break Azeroth's kingdoms, eliminate some of the strongest cultures in the world, it would allow Deathwing to devote his full attention to fending off his fellow aspects. The old gods that still whispered to him agreed with his plans and urged him to take small steps to aid the orcs. Disguised as a human, he worked his way into Lordaeron's society and made sure that no aid was sent to Stormwind. That the idea of an alien invading force was just a lie to cover up the growing problems of human rebels. He also disguised himself as a Blackrock orc and worked his way into orc society, figuring out how the orcs lived and who to get into good favor with. The Horde was a mighty force to be certain, but a unified Azeroth would oppose the already weakened army, not to mention that the dragon aspects were still out there. If they became aware of the threat that the Horde actually posed, the orcs would not stand a chance. Yet the dragon soul was also still out there, and while the enchantments placed upon it prevented any dragons from wielding it, that didn't stop Deathwing from using the orcs. He bombarded Zuluhead of the Dragonmaw with vivid dreams of his clan taming and riding strange, powerful winged creatures. He guided them to the Red Ridge Mountains, where deep beneath the land the dragon soul was hidden. Its guardian, the red dragon Alexstrasza, was killed by the Dragonmaw, to which Zuluhead ordered their great warlock Necros Skullcrusher to recover the artifact. He sensed faint fell energies on it, a remnant of its use during the War of the Ancients, and he renamed it to the Demon Soul. Alexstrasza could sense the breaking of the artifact's wards and flew out to investigate. They expected some foolish mortal to have stolen the artifact, vastly underestimating Deathwing's schemes. Dreams and visions were sent to Necros, teaching him how to use the artifact. Most importantly, how to use it to submit and enslave the Queen of the Dragons. Within Grim Batol, they forced her to mate. If she refused, they smashed dragon eggs right in front of her, smearing the yolk on her face. She isn't called the Lifebinder for nothing. Seeing her children used as tools of war, it broke her heart, but so did the loss of life. They had no chance against the power of the Demon Soul, and for several years the Dragonmaw held the Red Dragonflight hostage. Despite this great advantage, the Horde still lost the war against the Alliance of Lordaeron, and so did Deathwing's plans of wiping out the opposition. Not all was lost though. Alexstrasza was still in the hands of the Dragonmaw, something that her consort Alexstrasza could not appreciate. He knew that he could not free her by himself, so he pleaded with the other aspects to help him. Perhaps they would listen to him if he brought the terror to the very sanctums. In the frozen lair of the blue, he spoke with the mad Malygos, informed him of Deathwing's plans, and showed him an image of the Demon Soul. Only an illusion, yet it still put such fear in the heart of Malygos that it took him more than a minute to force his gaze upon it. Finding out that Deathwing was still alive and the Demon Soul back in use, it angered the Blue, yet it did not push him immediately into action. He would consider Alexstrasza's request, but made no promises. The Red would then go on and ask Ner'zhul and Ysera as well, nearly killing himself in the process, all for the sake of saving his beloved queen. The aspects were very wary of the powers from the demon soul. Confronting it, as well as Deathwing in their weakened state, was not a choice easily made. Soon enough it became clear that Deathwing was planning to steal some of the red dragonflight's unhatched eggs for himself, use them to revitalize the black dragonflight, and Alexstrasza nearly fell to despair. It would be mortals, not dragons, that gave him hope again. The Mage Ronin found out that the Dragonmaw clan still had a whole bunch of power, even after their war, and he was determined to break that strength. Alexstrasza took on the form of the High Elf Mage Crassus and promised the human all the aid that he could muster to free the red dragonflight. Ronin then rallied a small group of friends, including the High Elf Ranger Farisa Windrunner and the Dwarf Griffin Rider Falstad Wildhammer, and rushed to Grim Batol to free the dragons. When they arrived, the battle was already underway. The moment the Dragonmaw had left Grim Batol, Deathwing attacked and slaughtered countless of the orcs. He had no desire to keep them or the adult dragons alive, since only the eggs were of use to him. Unfortunately for Deathwing, his brazen assault, it had some unintended consequences. As the battle unfolded, Alexstrasza broke free of her chains. Before Necros could kill her with the demon soul, she devoured him whole, taking vengeance for all the horrors that he inflicted upon her. Then she turned her wrath upon Deathwing. And she was not alone. Ysera, Nosdormu and Malygos, all of them answered Alexstrasza's call and soon joined her in the fight against Deathwing. As the 5 dragon aspects grappled in the sky, Ronin and his mortal allies they focused their attention on the orcs and the demon soul. The mage discovered a flaw in the ancient artifact. It was invulnerable to nearly everything found in the world, except for Deathwing himself. With a scale from the black dragon, he cut into the demon soul hardened gold exterior like a knife through butter. He then gathered the escaping powers back to where they belonged. After millennia, the aspects were at full power once again. "Can you feel it? Can you feel it?" Malygos babbled. "I am me again! What a glorious thing!" Deathwing now found himself under attack by 4 elemental forces, the likes of which he had never faced. No longer did he fight mere shadows of his rivals, but a quartet, each his equal, and he no match for all together. Malygos brought the very clouds on him. Clouds with suffocating holds around the black dragon jaws and nostrils. Nosdormu turned time forward for Deathwing alone, sapping his adversary of his strength, but forcing Deathwing to suffer weeks, months, then years without rest. His defenses already crippled by these assaults, Ysera had no trouble invading his mind, turning the armored behemoth's thoughts to his worst nightmares. Against any other attack, even the nightmares of Ysera, Deathwing could summon some defense, but against Alexstrasza, he had no weapon to draw upon. She attacked him with pain, but it was her pain. She dealt not with agony as he knew it, but with that of a loving mother who suffered with each child torn away from her, with each child turned into something terrible, with each child who perished. "You will go through all I have gone through, Dark One. Let us see if you fare any better than I did." But Deathwing had no experience in such suffering. It tore at him where the pain of vicious talons or ripping teeth could not, for it tore at him in his very being. The most terrible dragons screamed as none had ever heard a dragon scream before. That perhaps was all that saved him, so startled were the others by it that they faltered in their own spells. Able at last to rip free, Deathwing turned and fled, flying fast and furious. His entire body shook as he continued to scream, even as he swiftly dwindled from sight. Deathwing was on the run, wounded and defeated, but would not stay that way forever. The aspects, they did get their powers back and returned to watch over their domains, went back to the sacred charge bestowed upon them by the Titans. The sudden return of their strength, it was physically and mentally exhausting for all of them. Malygos even regained a sliver of clarity, but not enough to completely break him out of his lethargy. It did change him though. For the first time in ages, Malygos again began roaming the Nexus, surveying the state of his lair and his followers. The aspect became a little bit more active again, enough so to send out the blue dragon Malygos to investigate what was going on with the Sunwell. Sanity still eluded him though. Now Deathwing was the reason for his madness, and accidentally would be the reason for restoring it. After the Horde was defeated by the Alliance of Lordaeron, they returned for a second invasion, not to conquer the planet, but to gather powerful artifacts. Deathwing decided to use the Orcs again, offer his aid with their quest, for a price. They took his black dragon eggs through the dark portal and stored them on Draenor. A new world to conquer was just too tasty to pass up on, a world that we now know as Outland. Those powerful artifacts that they gathered, it was to create more portals to different worlds. The intervention of the Alliance, stepping through the Dark Portal themselves and taking the battle to the orcs, it caused the Horde's plans to fail. Instead, we saw many rifts across the already corrupted world open up, transforming it into the broken planet as we see it today. This transformation, this explosion, it infused those black dragon eggs with energies, turning them into Nether Dragons. They were powerful, yet childish. They had no true leader, which made them susceptible to outside influences, ready to abuse them. Like the renegade Death Knight did, Ragnar Bloodreaver. He was the one who took control of the Nether Dragons in an attempt to become Lord of Outland. His plans failed, of course, but the abuse that the Nether Dragons suffered, it deeply concerned the blue dragon Tiragosa. She was concerned that they would die from the injuries that they'd suffered while fighting under Ragnar's command. So it was that she decided to transport many of the Nether Dragons to the Nexus, hoping that its energies would reinvigorate the wounded creatures. What Tiragosa never considered was whether or not the blue dragons would be safe from the Nether Dragons. They bathed in the arcane energies of the Nexus. The magic was unlike anything that they had ever experienced. They wanted it all, seeing it as a way to make themselves stronger, so that no one could ever control them as Ragnar had. The Nether Dragons launched a surprise attack against the Blues to seize the Nexus for themselves. The battle that unfolded, it drew the attention of Malygos. Now normally, he ignored what was happening in the outside world, relying on his servants to investigate anomalies and keep watch over the planets. Yet, he would not ignore an attack on his own lair. He lashed out at the Nether Dragons, absorbing nearly all of them into his being. Unexpectedly, the energies of the incorporeal creatures, it swept away the haze of suffering and regret that had clouded his mind for so very long. This attack, it convinced Malygos that he needed to step up. He needed to embrace this sacred duty of safeguarding arcane magic on Azeroth once again. The blue dragon aspect had regained his sanity. A great thing for him, of course, but not so much for the world of Azeroth. As he assessed the state of magical affairs, he was not pleased by what he saw. In his eyes, the foolish actions of the mortal magi, it had led to war and chaos. A plan was formed to re-establish his dominance over magic. He would sever the link between the mortals and the latent arcane energy that coursed through the worlds. This went against the blessing that was placed upon him by the Titans. Remember, magic must be regulated, managed and controlled, but it must also be appreciated and valued, and not hoarded. Such is the contradiction that you must deal with. May you be dutiful and joyous both. No joy was to be found here, as Malygos commanded his followers to scour Azeroth for every magical ley line and redirect its energies towards the Nexus. As they did, the dragon aspect took the gathered torrents of power and channeled them into the twisting nether. Malygos intended to siphon from every source of arcane power on the planet and dispose of the energy where no mage could reach it, thereby erasing arcane magic from the world. The Magi quickly noticed that something was amiss. The natural paths of arcane power that they had grown accustomed to using were disappearing, and they could sense them being redirected to Northrend. A few powerful Magi of the Kirin Tor set out to investigate. When they arrived at the Nexus, they were confronted by Malygos himself. The blue dragon aspect hid nothing from them. He told them exactly what he was trying to do, and exactly why he was trying to do it. The use of the arcane had put the burning Legion's eye on Azeroth. Repeatedly so, and now the armies of the Horde and the Alliance were abusing those energies to settle their faction disputes. He showed the Magi the damage that had already been done to Azeroth and demanded that they join his cause. Some high-ranking Magi were actually swayed by his arguments, and they pledged themselves to the Blue Dragonflight. Known as Mage Hunters, they dedicated themselves to erasing all resistance to the Blue Dragonflight's new purpose. Others were not convinced, horrified, and attempted to escape, but none succeeded. They were killed to stop word from getting back to the Kirin Tor. Yet this duty that was given to Malygos, it was not just for the sake of magic or the population of the planet. Although they had never told him, deep down inside of Azeroth was a slumbering world soul that might one day awaken and become the most powerful titan ever seen. Malygos' campaign had upset the equilibrium of the world, sparking natural disasters from Northrend to the southern tips of Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms. Unless something was done, these disasters would spiral out of control and cause irreparable harm to Azeroth's world soul. Heroes were needed, not just against this threat, but also the Lich King waking up and the old god Yogg-Saron stirring within Ulduar. After the fall of Naxxramas, the Kirin Tor finally uncovered what was happening at the Nexus. Archmage Ronin, now leader of the Kirin Tor, he was shocked to learn that some of their own had defected to the Blue Dragonflight's cause. The danger posed by Malygos was so great that the Magi of Dalaran did something unprecedented. Once they had completed the reconstruction of their city, you might remember it being destroyed by our command, they pooled the powers together and teleported their entire city to the skies above Northrend. From their new vantage point, the Kirin Tor launched an offensive to stop Malygos' campaign, but progress was slow. The Blue Dragon aspect and his servants were too strong for even the great Magi of Dalaran to contend with. In time, the Kirin Tor had no other choice but to call upon the Alliance and Horde to aid them. The idea of diverting resources from the war against the Lich King did not sit well with either Garrosh or Bolvar, but both agreed that it was necessary. Members of the factions set out to probe the Blue Dragonfly's defenses around the Nexus. They were joined by representatives of the other Dragonflights, who had also grown wary of Malygos. The mortals and dragons attempted to contact the aspect of magic and convince him to end this destructive crusade, but their efforts were met with open hostility. In the game, we see this play out with several quests surrounding the Nexus and the dungeon inside. For example, there's the red dragon Alexstrasza, who we save from an arcane prison. When she refused to bend to Malygos' will, he bound her to this prison, then shattered it and scattered the pieces. Now liberated, she has a plan to draw the aspect of magic out of his lair. All we need is a little bit of bait. The dead body of his guardian and consort Saragossa. That will do. Alexstrasza suffered greatly at the hands of Saragossa during her captivity. Now her time to die has come. The corpse is dropped on the ground and put to the flame. Malygos is taunted to come out of hiding, which he does, and the Blue is not exactly happy with what we've done. With his consort dead, he's going to need a new one. Alexstrasza will do, as she is frozen in place and taken into the Nexus. Whether the torture inflicted on Alexstrasza was revenge for the death of Saragossa or a misguided attempt to turn her into an ally is known only to Malygos. Regardless of his intent, her allies have heard her cries of anguish and disturbing whispers of her diminishing mind.
Finish it! Finish it! Kill me or I swear by the Dragon Queen you'll never see daylight again!
As this conflict intensified, the dragon aspect Alexstrasza and ambassadors from the other Dragonflight, they met to discuss Malygos' fate. Even some of the Blue Dragons were not down with what their leader was doing and they joined the gathering. Malygos had already killed far too many innocents, and his siphoning of Azeroth's ley lines had upset the balance of the world. The death and destruction were bound to only worsen over time. So, with very heavy hearts, the dragons reached an agreement that would become known as the Wormrest Accord. For the good of Azeroth, they would join the side of mortals and make war on Malygos. Reaching this decision was not easy on any of them, but especially for Alexstrasza. She saw Malygos as a brother, and as a guardian of life, she abhorred the bloodshed that was to come. Yet, if she decided to do nothing, she knew that the numbers of lives lost would be unimaginable. Next point of assault, that was the Oculus, floating magical rings blasting the gathered magical energies into the twisting nether. Now previous assault teams, they've already been captured, so we need to save them from Dracos the Interrogator. Those who have broken Malygos' law may find themselves under the claws of Dracos. After securing Alexstrasza in the Nexus, Dracos turned to the Oculus to collect his newest prisoners, other Drakes who ran afoul of Malygos. He makes no claims of rehabilitation, and he uses no metaphors. His prisoners are here to be punished, and there is no escape. Except with our aid, of course. On their backs, we get to fly through everybody's favorite dungeon, clearing the rings and clearing the way until only one guardian stands before us. The time has come to face Aragos. He is cunning and strong, one of Malygos' most trusted minions. He draws strength from the energies he's charged with defending, sipping from the well of the great aspect himself. This shall not be easy, but with the full powers of our drakes, the guardian goes down. That leaves us with only the Eye of Eternity left. But before we go there, we're going to need a special key. Malygos is using a powerful device known as the Focusing Iris to pull the arcane magic from the ley lines into the Nexus. If we're able to tap into it, we should be able to draw his attention away from the ley lines and towards fighting us. Only problem is that it's the ancient members of the Blue Dragonflight that possesses such a key. As luck would have it, our adventures into Naxxramas has us face one of those ancient blues, Sephiron, resurrected by Arthas himself. On his body, we find the key to the Focusing Iris. Alexstrasza imbues us with a portion of her power. This in turn allows us to access the Focusing Iris and finally draw Malygos' ire.
My patience has reached its limit. I will be rid of you!
The aspect of magic is no easy prey, and he does not stand alone. But we can use his powers against him, eventually forcing him to destroy the platform that we stand on.
Enough! If you intend to reclaim Azeroth's magic, then you shall have it. Now your benefactors make their appearance, but they are too late. The powers contained here are sufficient to destroy the world 10 times over. What do you think they will do to you?
Thankfully, we do not stand alone either. The red dragonflight saves us from immediate death. And together we push on, despite Malygos tapping into those arcane energies that they harvested. Together, for the sake of Azeroth, we end the aspect of magic.
Unthinkable! The mortals will destroy everything. My sister, what have you...
I did what I had to, brother. You gave me no alternative. And so ends the Nexus War. This resolution pains me deeply, but the destruction, the monumental loss of life had to end. Regardless of Malygos' recent transgressions, I will mourn his loss. He was once a guardian, a protector. This day, one of the world's mightiest has fallen. The Red Dragonflight will take on the burden of mending the devastation wrought on Azeroth. Return home to your people and rest. Tomorrow will bring you new challenges, and you must be ready to face them. Life goes on.
This is a very sad day, not only for dragonkind, but for all living creatures of the world. We have lost one of our most thoughtful, intelligent and ancient friends. Magic is now without its guardian. Let us hope that this was a wise decision in the coming years. A storm is still brewing on the horizon, and now we are without one of our most powerful defenders. Alexstrasza felt no relief or joy in ending the life of her ancient friend, only a deep sorrow. With Malygos' death, the Blue Dragonflight's campaign was put to an end. Members of the Kirin Tor would spend years reversing the damage done to Azeroth ley lines, eventually restoring them to their former power. With the threat of Malygos out of the way, the Horde and Alliance turned the gaze on the Lich King once again, which then led to the event of the Wrathgate. Yet for Malygos, his time had come. A very tragic tale of betrayal from his best friend, to spend a millennia lingering in madness. With his mind clear, he thought that he was doing what was best for the world, but the world disagreed. The Blues are now without a leader, without the aspect of magic, but would not remain so. Once again, their story would be connected to Deathwing, as he would break out of the world during the Cataclysm. But this brings us to the end of the story of Malygos. I'm certain that we'll do a deep dive into the story of Malygos in the future, but for now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, guys, see ya!